My heart's beating. Good morning, church. I actually have not said yes to Pastor Art yet for this. I have still not said yes, but I'm here. Being a woman of rest. I actually love this topic because of what happened to me last year. So I will share a part of that. But before I start, last night, Clayton and we went out to a dinner party. And I said, Clayton, listen, I have to be at church on Sunday speaking about being a woman of rest. So I need to be home early. And of course, I didn't get into bed until 12. So this morning I had to do eye drops and makeup because we want to try and hide the physical tiredness so that I wouldn't be able to stand here and speak on being a woman of rest with my eyes all red and bloodshot. So I'm actually tired, but I'm good. I have two scriptures that I want to speak on this morning. The first actually comes from Psalm 37, 7a. The A, not the entire verse. And it says, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him." As women, we are very good at multitasking, but we are very bad at saying no. We are always on the go. We are super mom at home. We are super woman at work. We are doctors for our kids. We are counselors for our husbands. We are night nurses for whoever calls on us. And we always have a to-do list. And busyness is a problem in our society. And if we are not careful, if we are not already there, we can become victims to this. There's a song called Fear is a Liar. And there's a part of that song that says, it will stop you in your steps and it will rob your rest. I want to tell you today that busyness will and can rob you of that rest. Sometimes I find we take on tasks that are meant for us. They are not meant for us, but because we don't know how to say no, we take them on and then it becomes a burden to us. But it's okay to say no. No is actually an answer. I think sometimes we don't believe that no is an answer, but no is an answer. And when I take a look at this verse, Psalm 37, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to me? And when I broke it down, for me it means slowing down, being quiet. It implies tranquility and peace. It implies to be prayerful. It says, and wait patiently for him. That means we have to be sitting at the feet of God, waiting for him to speak to us. And for him to speak to us and for us to hear him, we have to be quiet. We have to be still. We have to start letting go of stuff and having no distractions. And when I got to that part, I was actually in bed writing some notes. And I started to write and I'm like, no distractions, i.e. no cell phones, no TV, no email. And I had my cell phone texting and I had the TV going on because the voice was on and I'm like, I need to see the voice. And as I'm doing this, I'm like, Michelle, what are you doing? You're actually saying no distractions. And you have your text going and you're watching the TV and I'm like, okay, hold up. So I actually stopped and I'm like, okay, let me just watch the voice because I literally can't do anything here. And that's the thing, you have to prioritize actually. So I stopped everything that I was doing and I watched the voice and I was like, oh, okay, I'm good. So after I was done, of course I went back and I did my work. There's a word that I want us to remember, and it's intentional, which goes hand in hand with this. So the verse says, I like the message, it says, quiet down before God and be prayerful before him. From that I got, we need to be intentional about pursuing the heart of God. We need to be intentional about getting rid of stuff. Whatever your stuff is, whatever my stuff is, we need to be intentional about getting rid of that. We need to be intentional about setting side aside to be still. We also need to be intentional about prioritizing what needs to be done. It implies intentional stillness, and that takes work. It's not an easy task. I looked up the Hebrew word for rest, and it says, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it says daman, D-A-M-A-N, and it means to be silent and to be still. And I said, that's really hard. When I was in college, there was no way I could study in a library because it was too quiet. I love noise. So if it were too quiet, I would be looking around, what is happening? What is happening? So I had to force myself to get out of the library and sit in a room where I could hear noise, because then I could focus, which is really weird. But it's really hard to be still and to be quiet. So based on this verse, to being a woman of rest, we therefore have to put some parameters or some parameters or set some boundaries in our lives so that we will be able to let go of stuff, be consistent or intentional about sitting at his feet. Therefore, you can now become or be on a path of being a woman of rest. There's another text that I would like to focus on, and another word. I love words. The second text actually comes from 1 Kings 19, verses 1 through 4, which I will read. Just as a background, this has to do with Elijah. He had just had two great moments in his life where he prayed and rain came, and he actually had a very successful moment with Ahab when he, let me read it. I don't want to mess up the scripture. And Ahab told, right before that, sorry. Let me just go back a little bit. 1 Kings 19, 1 Kings. I'm sorry, let me go back so I can read I just want to read the ending of chapter 18. I'm trying to pray. Okay, it's taking too long. I'm sorry. All right, okay. I'll go back here. So reading from 1 Kings 19, verses 1 through 4. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, also how he had executed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And when he saw that, he arose and ran for his life and went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he prayed that he might die and said, it is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. You're probably wondering why I chose this text, but this is what I went through last year, meaning Elijah had two great moments, real big victories. And most often, victories precedes vulnerability. Most often, circumstances, whether good or bad, will drain you of strength. The word I would like for you guys to remember throughout this text is the word thrive. Thrive as opposed to survive. Last year around this time, I was actually surviving. I was not thriving. And I looked up the word thrive. It means to flourish, to prosper, to bloom, or grow or develop vigorously. Survive, on the other hand, means to live, to exist, to pull through, to get through, to make it. You can continue to live or exist in spite of. That's where I was last year. And I pose this question to you. Which would you rather be? Would you rather be thriving or surviving? Last year I had some big moments in my life. Loss of a brother. My mom actually last year was in the hospital on Mother's Day last year. I had 2 weddings back to back. So I had big moments in my life last year. Just as Elijah. Elijah had 2 great moments in his life. But after Elijah had these moments, he became weary. He became vulnerable. He was drained of physical strength and he was drained of spiritual strength. And if we are not renewed and refreshed and revived, what happens in? Doubt comes in, fear sets in, you name it, it will set in. So last year, this time, I had moments where I was physically drained, I was spiritually drained, and my cup, I tell you, was less than half full. And I was at a place where, I'm sure some of you have been in the biolab where you had this mouse that was just running and getting nowhere. That's where I was. Until the Lord stopped me in my tracks. He actually said to me, stop. And when he said that, I just stopped. And I just cried. And I'm like, God, I am tired of being tired. So my thing for you, ladies and men, when you have those moments where, whether it's a big moment or it's a sad moment or it's like, I can't do this anymore, remember that what needs to be done to become a woman of rest is that you need to be always being filled. You need to go to that place where you can be restored. And that's what I had to do. I was forced to do it last year. So I've been on the path of rest. Some of you, like Bree, she's only beginning that path. So when I share this story, I share my story because I want you to take a stock and see where your tank is. If your tank is not being filled during those times when things are going well, then you need to take a stock and say, you know what? I need to make a change. I need to start seeking God. I need to start creating those moments. I need to find that place of sanctuary where I can be fed so that my cup will be at that place where it's a reserve for when you're in those deep moments and you need to pull out those great times, those restful times, those times where you will be thriving and not surviving. To survive means to pull through, to get through. You don't want to be just at that getting through. You want to flourish. You want to bloom. You want, when people look at you, they say, wow, you are at that place of rest. So in wrapping this up, last year when I did a mini thing with the woman, I actually had, I know Pastor did a acronym, so I had one before you actually. So my R comes from Psalm 23:3 that says, restore my soul. So the R in rest for me is, Lord, restore my soul. E is for easy. Michelle touched on that in Matthew 11:28 and 30, that said, God's yoke is easy. So E for me in that is easy. Remember that God's yoke is easy. S is still one of my favorite verses, Psalm 47:10. Be still and know that He is God. So my S to you is be still, which will take work. T was kind of tricky. So my T is time. I need to know how to prioritize my time. I need to know that I can share watching The Voice with being at rest with God. You need to know how to prioritize your time so that it's not just the leftovers that you're giving God, but that you're actually sitting at His feet, being fed so that your cup is always full. The right time is now. Know when to say no. Ecclesiastes 3:16 says there's a time for everything under heaven. And I truly believe if we want to be where God wants you to be right now, we need right now, take that time right now, the time for everything. There's a time for everything under heaven, and the time is right now for us to be at rest. Thank you.